I'm Galahound19, and for a while I've been wanting to draw some apocalyptic style characters. I just couldn't decide on what topic to pair it with, but then I'd done all these cool fusion designs in my last collab with the Drawing DM. So I thought I could take something from here, mix it with this, with a dash of that, and, well, here you go!
Now this is a world that somehow keeps on ending. They've had a nuclear holocaust, zombie outbreaks. Seriously, at this point, Doomsday is just your typical work day. I mean, this story literally begins in a hole in the ground. Iron Point, a large town crammed into a not-so-large cavern. It's pretty much a den of misfits, but it's better than playing tag with zombies out in the scorching desert. Now one day, a particular misfit, Felix Leos, former doctor, now typical scavenger, was trying his luck at this treacherous scrapyard just outside of Iron Point. It used to be popular for all sorts of salvageables, even military tech. That was until it got overrun a few years ago by a colony of giant mutant rats. Fortunately for Felix, he managed to find a way inside. He was stealthy and handy enough with an axe to deal with lone rats before they could alert their colony. Until he stepped on a platform that looked sturdy. He fell right through it and into a crevice made from scrap metal. Felix, aside from a few scrapes and bruises, was fine. He went crawling round the jagged edges, looking for a way out. But instead, he found a friggin' spaceship! Seriously, a damaged sci-fi vessel buried under 2 tons of garbage. From the rust on the hull, it must have been there a good few decades. He climbed into the vessel and found all sorts of parts and components you could sell for a handsome price. But then, he found rows and rows of cryogenic pods, devices meant to store and preserve live human beings for decades at a time. Except, these humans weren't so preserved. Felix cringed at the frozen bodies, but he found 2 of the pods were still working, and they had children in them, little girls. Felix wanted to learn more, but then came the scraping of claws. The mutant rat colony had found him and were tearing their way into the ship. With not a lot of time, Felix tried something risky. He rushed over to the ship's control console and fired up the thrusters. It wasn't so much flying, but more like blasting their way out of the scrapyard. It was one rough ride. The ship was turning and tumbling for a full 10 minutes. The second it stopped, Felix went over to the pods and opened them. That was when his life changed. The girls' names were Fiona Kipoka and Sasha Clementines, and from then on, the scavenger cared for them both as his daughters. It wasn't easy. They had no memories of their past, and the malfunctioning cryopod had given Sasha severe frostbite to her arms and legs. Felix, with his skills as a doctor and the tech he ripped out of the ship, constructed new bionic limbs for the girl. She struggled to move with them at first, but a few weeks later, she was attempting flips and twirls. She was a bit of a daredevil, and would insist on joining Felix on his scavenging trips. And Fiona, she's a smart one. At a young age, she worked the trade markets like a pro. Why, she could sell ice to an Eskimo. Well, that is before the polar ice caps melted. Look, what I'm saying is they were one happy apocalyptic family. But that's not where this story ends. Let's skip ahead a few years where both the girls are in their late teens, early 20s. By that time, they had each made a reputation for themselves. Sasha became a pro at motorball, rocket-powered Quidditch, and pretty much any crazy sport. And Fiona had moved on from the markets and was learning from Felix on how to be a doctor. She had even had a few of her own experiments in the works. Things were pretty good. But the two of them would soon realize that peace is easily broken. It all started when Felix was acting strange, working later in the evenings, and when asked about his day, he would roll it off with a joke, which wasn't unusual for him, but it did seem like he was hiding something. Then one night he came home exhausted, and when asked the same question, Felix lashed out like an angry weasel mutant, which was very unlike him. He immediately apologized. The sisters played it off that it was all okay, but they wanted answers even more. So the next night, they followed Felix to a rundown part of Iron Point that made New Jersey look good. Felix then went down a dark alleyway where he was met by 3 men clad in leather armor and skull-shaped gas masks. Fiona immediately recognized them as the Immortal Raiders, the most powerful and downright craziest gang in the Wastelands. And by the way they were talking to Felix, they had known him for a long time. As the sisters tried to get a better look, they had accidentally knocked over a trash can. All eyes fell on them. One raider pulled out his weapon and fired 2 darts at them. But Felix threw himself in the way, taking one of the projectiles in his chest. But the other flew past his shoulder and straight into Fiona's side. Felix then drew his gun and fired 5 rounds, killing 2 of the raiders, but one got away with a grazed shoulder. Fiona pulled the dart from her side, and she recognized the chemical. It was a zombie virus. They had a few hours at most, so without skipping a beat, she grabbed Sasha and Felix and rushed them back home. Remember when I said she was working on her own experiments? Well, one of them was a possible zombie cure. Highly experimental, with no telling of the side effects, but it's their only hope. And so, Fiona and Felix got to work. She gave him a dirty look or two, but stayed quiet and focused on the task at hand. But despite their best efforts, they were only able to synthesize enough to cure one of them. Upon realizing this, Felix locked the sisters in their house with the cure. He gave a heartfelt goodbye and told them hidden in his office were letters explaining his actions. And so, accepting his fate, the man got in his truck and drove off. Felix was gone, and they didn't even have time to be sad about it. Fiona gave herself the cure, and within a few minutes of taking it, her body throbbed with pain. Pink patches appeared along her skin, and her arm turned into a freaking beast claw? I don't know the exact science, but apparently she added mutant genes to counteract with the zombie virus. So now she is part mutant. And unfortunately, most members of their community are mutant phobic, so they needed to leave. But first, they needed to learn what Felix was up to. Searching his office, they found under the floorboards were the letters he described alongside a small arsenal of weapons. But the sisters were more surprised about the letters. They were to Beatrix Furiana, the Zero Warrior, the renowned freedom fighter. It turned out they were working together to take down the Immortal Raiders. The plan was for Felix to infiltrate their group to get close to their boss, Jackson the Immortal. But now, that wasn't happening. This broke Fiona's heart. Her distrust for the only father she ever had just driven him out of her life, caused her own mutant transformation, and possibly ruined their chance of getting rid of the savage raider gang. Sasha comforted her sister, and they both agreed there was only one thing left to do. They loaded up and went looking for the Zero Warrior. What they knew about this person is that she had one foot in the Japanese Edo period, another foot in the technological modern age, and a sword through the criminal underbelly. Her background is full of rumors. The most commonly used was that as a child, she was sold into slavery after her village was attacked attacked by marauders. She was sold to a warlord, and during her enslavement, she crafted weapons in secret, arming the other slaves. As a teenager, she led a revolt, and where it came at the cost of her arm, she managed to defeat the battalions and kill the warlord. She could have easily returned home, but instead, she devoted her life to justice. In a bloody samurai kind of way. Now, the sisters went looking for days. During that time, they ran into zombies, defective killer robots, and sketchy salesmen in trench coats. But at the end, they didn't find Beatrix. She found them. Out of nowhere, she came crashing down on them like a red bolt of lightning. Even with Sasha's augments and Fiona's mutations, Beatrix had them both pinned down. And with their faces on the ground, they both explained their side of the story. A few minutes later, Beatrix let them go, then took a deep bow, apologizing for her actions. Then she bowed even deeper, apologizing for their loss. Her and Felix had been good friends. He had even provided her with a prosthetic arm. The sisters explained that they wanted to finish what Felix had started. They wanted to take down Jackson the Immortal. Beatrix was skeptical at first, but she agreed to let them join her team and began training them in both firearms and hand-to-hand combat, during of which Fiona got a better control of her mutant abilities, able to change her limbs from human to pink jaguar claw thingies. And she became handy enough of a weapon that Beatrix gave her an element gun, able to shoot incendiary rounds, toxin pellets, and electric bolts. Sasha also became skilled with an assault rifle, hits the bullseye every single time. With training going so well, Beatrix finally shared what she learned about Jackson. Apparently, he was there when the world ended centuries ago. By that time, he was just your typical playboy billionaire. But then the nukes came a-landing. Or was it the zombies? Or the ape uprising, or whichever ended the world first. The point is, Jackson's father, Mr. Hyperius, saw it coming, and with the tech companies at his disposal, he had a bunker crafted with hundreds of cryopods for him and his most loyal employees. Hyperius also invested in weapons development, so when they thawed out hundreds of years later, he had all sorts of weapons stashes throughout the country. But Jackson wanted to take a less military route, so he established connections with local settlements. And later on, a particularly large settlement had invited Hyperius and his people to a peace treaty, except it was a trap. Met with gunfire and explosives, Hyperius was killed. Jackson had lost his face and his sanity. Retreating to one of the weapon stashes, Jackson developed a line of mecha suits. He then returned to that treacherous settlement and burned it to the ground, leaving no survivors. And he's done the same thing to every settlement he's come across. Even the ones that were generally peaceful, that just made him easy prey. So obviously the ladies can't let that stand. Luckily, Fiona triangulated the raiders' movements and was able to pinpoint their next targeted location. With this intel, Beatrix and her freedom fighters intercepted Jackson and his forces in an isolated canyon, resulting in an all-out war with all sorts of guns, melee weapons, and a guitar guy for some reason. Beatrix, Sasha, and Fiona all ganged up on Jackson, but his mecha suit more than even the odds. He deflected gunfire and shattered the ground with but a stomp of his foot. But these ladies weren't gonna stop. After hours of fighting, Sasha smashed his weapon, allowing Fiona to get in close, and with her beast claws, she tore off his breastplate, revealing his chest. The sisters then slammed their fists into the mongrel's head, disorienting him long enough for Beatrix to come soaring in and plunge her sword through the man's wretched heart. Jackson was dead. His remaining raiders surrendered shortly afterwards. The freedom fighters rounded them up and took them them to prison, and the ladies found themselves a nice enough bar to celebrate their victory. How's that for an ending?
Oh, I am so down for another round of this. Maybe with superhero fusions or monster fusions. Just comment below what you'd like to see. Although it would be a while before I could get round to it. I got a bunch of different projects in the works. Like, next on this channel will be a Star Wars fan art reaction video. Now, if you like this video, then leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, check out the links down here, and most importantly, have a good day.